Hello and welcome everyone to this session. It's early morning here in USA and different time zones and different times in different time zones. So welcome to this session about how a digital transformation changes your project portfolio management approach. Being presented by Peter Kestenholz, a good friend and the founding partner for Projectum, one of our gold sponsors. He always brings a lot of good information to share and very inspiring stuff. So I'm actually very curious to hear what he has to say. Peter, take it over.
Thank you, Prasanna, and yeah, welcome for all of you who are in the call and the session right now, and hopefully more will join as well in the coming minutes. But we won't stop now and just get started instead. So I'm here to present obviously a topic that has for some been used a lot lately, which is digital transformation. And I'm going to do some perspective or set some perspective on how that will impact project portfolio management when working in project management offices, but also in organizations as a whole. So the session all up will have a brief intro to Projectum, the company I work for, but also the experience that I have as a person when it comes to this particular topic. Then we look into transformation and the digital DNA, the new way of doing IT. And that new way of doing IT, if you could show it here, obviously has an impact on how we consider project portfolio management, not just in IT projects, but all up. Perhaps maybe the future IT projects would be your business projects. So having a digital transformation, having a new digital DNA way of working, having something called project portfolio management, and then also having something called Microsoft. So the tools that Microsoft offers that kind of relates to the new way of working. Which are these? And obviously project is one of them, but there are many other things when it comes to collaboration that you could benefit from. And then finally, implementations as a transformation is also something that I'm going to round the session off with, as I believe that time has changed from being requirement specifications first, then system, to being more like a loose scope. We know we are going somewhere, we don't know where we'll end up, but we know we have to do something. And that's a transformation more than an installation. So how to achieve that also on a larger scale is where I'm gonna end my presentation. And I can see we have maybe a few comments. Let me just see. Yeah, just a second. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna wait with that. Perfect, it's just Prasanna. Excellent, I just need to be sure. So yes, moving forward.
I'll be moderating this, Peter. So.
Excellent, thank you. So, briefly about the company. So I'm from Projectum. We only do Microsoft PPM, have been doing so since 2004. We have a pretty solid track record, global as well, not just in Denmark and Sweden and Netherlands where we have offices, but more or less all over Europe. We have a lot of apps, as many others. We have a hardcore focus on resource management, which a few of my colleagues have showed also at this conference. And in general, we are pretty much up to speed on what happens when it comes to Microsoft and PPM from a technical standpoint, as we are obviously also in the Partner Advisory Council, but also as an MVP myself, working alongside with other MVPs, many of them in this conference. We are last year, or this year I could say, until today actually, winner of the award for PPM by Microsoft. And myself as a person have been working with PPM for 15 years. Actually, I would say way before it was called PPM. There was a point in time where it was called EPM. And I'm sharing this because people should know my background before I start talking about what I think is right and wrong. I have been focusing a lot on technology, obviously for Microsoft and project in this case. But I've also been heavily involved in PMI standards, as I've been a board member of PMI in Denmark. Also Prince2 and P30. So the whole process, especially for the public sector, and lately scaled Agile as well, as we do have a lot of customers looking into that. Today I'm a board member actively in what is called Danish Project Management Society, which is more related to IPMA and therefore embracing all of the different industries and methodologies than just one. So I'm pretty familiar with most project methodologies. Now I have a natural interest in innovation based on my background, and then obviously I have a blog called ppmblog.org, which is related to Microsoft Project and Planner. So let's get to the real thing. Digital transformation and digital DNA. Again, the word is known by all. What most have difficulties with is actually telling me when I'm out as a consultant what the real question was behind the digital transformation. It might be that transformations and digital transformations solve our problems, but it might not be that we know what we need to solve. For some, it's a matter of handling changes better. For others, it's about happier customers. For some, it's time to market that needs to be reduced. Others, it's about leading positions, so market leader positions. And to achieve that, you have to do something groundbreaking new. And for that reason, digital transformation comes into play. Now, here's an example from a Swedish company that all know, the car producer Volvo. So Volvo Cars have worked on a vision for quite a while, a few years actually, where the vision is that in 2020, no one should be killed or seriously injured in a new Volvo car. I have been familiar with this case for a few years, and it's been fun seeing how Volvo have evolved over the last 2 years in this case, because right now we're at a point in time where we actually have a landing page for how the future will look like, also made by Volvo, called Concept 26. We can also see how the car looks like. And we can see that that you have a reclining seat. So once it's up and running by itself, you can actually lean back and just fall asleep. Now, the trick here is that this is a hardcore computer. And the thing behind why this is a hardcore computer is that Volvo have now made it possible for cars to talk to each other. They must be connected so they can share risks, ice on the road, rain, whatever it could be, fog, and so on. So once one car identifies that, other cars have to be notified as well, real time preferably. So obviously you have a computer and they're all linked into the cloud, allowing them to talk to each other. And then one question could be, should that then, if Volvo does this and make it work, the technology, should that only be then closed around Volvo cars, or should other brands as well tap into that? I think there are ethical questions here and moral questions and a hardcore commercial question. The other part is that to ensure that nobody dies in the car, we need to learn why people die in the first place. And one thing is testing dolls and dummy people and driving cars into walls. Another thing is to ensure and track that when accidents happen, that we learn from them. And if it's all connected and digital and connected to the cloud, we should be able to simulate from a real crash what could have been improved to make sure that this crash didn't happen in the first place. Should we have tires being wider? Should the car be taller or opposite? And so on and so on. So bringing data from real crashes, having cars talking to each other, all into the same cloud, then we can start to look into how we can avoid accidents from happening in the future. So highly relevant for digital transformation talks when you are at Volvo right now. The other case I have here is Ikea, that we all know as well. We have the CIO of Ikea saying that digitalization is one of the most important pieces within the future of Ikea and a continued profitability. The trick here is that digital is not just fun because it's digital. It has to drive, in this case, profitability. It's directly linked to your revenue streams and way of making money. Now, the thing with Ikea is that they're opening up in many, many new countries, but also cities. If you have a country like China, Shanghai is massive, and I come from little Denmark, so it's really, really big. It's like a country in itself, and you have many of these countries within the country, and you also have people living in outside of the cities. So if you want to scale out as Ikea to these countries, you have to come up with some kind of approach that is sustainable, fast, lean, and digital. We can't have shops opening up everywhere physically. We have to make sure that people use, in this case, a mobile experience to buy digitally the goods that they're after. So IT is highly relevant for the growth strategy when you are at Ikea right now. As an example of that, I had a session around the same topic last Monday here in Denmark at a customer location. So before I went into doing my speech, I actually used the app called Ikea Home, which is free to download in your Apple store or Android store. You can then go in using the app and find specific items you want to try out in your home. So I used the reception area and the hallway for this company. And in real size, add it into the picture or your phone without having any VR glasses on or similar. I think in this case, I decorated an office, in some case with some lights and a bookshelf. And Once done, you have a working prototype of how your new interior decoration could look like. Imagine then that you could have this being sent to IKEA as what you want them to bring to you. And suddenly you have next day the goods being arriving at your front door. Also imagine that now that you have decorated your house, why would you need to yourself bring the thing into your house and assemble them? Maybe you would have that delivered as a service, because now we have evidence all down to the millimeter on where you want these items to be placed. So furniture as a service is my words going forward. I would love that. I'm not saying IKEA has that vision yet, but surely it's something that's possible now, and also something that would be of great benefit for many. Another case is still IKEA, just to perspectivate what IKEA is doing right now. So here you see a little video. Yes. So we'll stop here. So why did I show this? I showed this because this was just showing you that IKEA is up now battling against many other players, not just on furniture, in this case on lightning bulbs. You have Philips Hue as a strong player in the market. Now you also have IKEA. IKEA maybe have the upside that they have tons of people already going into their stores and might just pick up a few light bulbs while they're at it already. As you also saw, IKEA can have an app that controls not just the lights, but also connects it to your sound or your music. And that's because they made an agreement with Sonos. So you see new players in the market right now being able to compete against really hardcore established players. And that's because they have embraced the digital transformation. They have learned that IT is not a cost center. It's by far the biggest profit center going forward. So IT is not something that's always put into a business case and then somebody have to see how much cost they can cut. It might be the opposite going forward, and it highly is for some of these companies already. So just to conclude on IKEA, I'll be brief on this. Once you have the VR experience, and once you're able to get your stuff brought to you, and maybe you still want to assemble it yourself, why not have an AR experience assembling your goods? You simply scan your IKEA items. This is also a working prototype. And you'll be shown in 3D, in real size, on your own floor, how to connect and do with your screws as you should do in the right order. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this video, but again, technology is there. Not being a player in this market, and somebody else will become that player. So before we conclude on digital transformation and why it's relevant for all, this is my personal house. This is where I live. My brain is connected when I'm at home to Alexa, in this case Amazon, which is not right now also talking to Cortana. So that's a very good start. When I'm not in my house, out working, driving, then it's my iPhone in this case doing the magic. And luckily, most of these apps can connect across both Amazon and in this case Siri. So around me, I have a variety of different technology that is used. Something is used to control my light. Some is used to control music. I have Spotify as my music player. I have a Ring for my doorbell, so packages can be delivered. I have Arlo for security. NetAtmo for managing my valves, my thermostats, so controlling temperature. When I say good morning to my phone, it starts off my coffee machine, which has a Bluetooth connected also to Amazon Alexa. Then I have my whole agenda, my Outlook account connected to it, so my wife can see where I'm out traveling, and if things changes, she will see it in real time. And Fitbit and my air quality, and so on and so on. All of this altogether might be something like 3,000 or 4,000 USD. But then you have the full package up and running. And your old house, in this case, my old house from 1939, suddenly got brought into the future. So I pick and choose my goods and my products based on the APIs and the connectability that the products have that I buy. So this set of technology might change. When I learned that Apple Music could not be connected to Amazon Alexa, then I replaced Apple Music to Spotify. And that's the way I will keep thinking going forward. And I believe that's the way most consumers will behave going forward, especially with the new and younger generations. They want stuff to be together, just working. and they expect that all of these APIs talk to each other. So this was kind of like the pitch for why this matters for all of us. So for IKEA and Volvo, you have two very clear messages. For IKEA, how can we reach all people? And for Volvo, how can we avoid death in cars? Both driven solution-wise from IT. So the next thing is then, how do we become ready for this transformation? Here we have a rather old, but a few years old, is quite a lot in this industry, but still very relevant, made by Deloitte and MIT, where the output from that study is that we need to innovate more quickly. I think most of us know that already, but maybe we don't know what that means in general. Because in this case, it means that we have to adopt a new IT operating model. We need to also have our business users become good enough to be self-serviced when it comes to IT. We should step away from having all these IT tickets created to having business users who can fix these things themselves, releasing more energy for revenue-driven IT. And on the right side, IT must also become the partner to the business to ensure priorities and investments are aligned, and so on and so on. Again, the thing here is that IT might be the business. Maybe IT is the core of your business, and everything else around IT is the support function. That's the real big transformation when you do that. And it's a very new way of thinking, especially if you are an established player who've been around for hundreds or 50 years, to think like that. So looking at it from a more specific perspective, you have the legacy DNA, which in this case is the way IT is for most today, where we say ability to change. Well, we are slow, but we are innovating. I just need to remove that one. Sorry, that's a little survey here that popped up. And we have work style, structure, risk appetite, and so on. I think the most interesting one is something like risk. Because for most of the customers I've worked for, risk management on a business case level is where you try to really identify, is this idea worthwhile doing based on the associated risks, obviously also cost and benefit. But if it has a high risk, some have a tendency to take risk and make a time it by benefits to get your weighted benefits. So if any kind of real new thinking, which is clearly always a risky thing to do, is always looked at as something that we shouldn't do because something has less risk, then you might not be the most fast at doing new innovative actions, and your competitors might take over. So being cautious when it comes to taking risks should then move into being more of an exploratory approach. We like to take risks. We have to take risks. And I'll get back to later how that impacts your portfolio setup. All of this is something we want to remove friction. Friction between users, friction between customers, friction between management decision, and so on. So it's about making it easier for the flow to get up and running, the flow of work, the flow of bringing good stuff to your customers. Here's another overview actually provided by Microsoft, where we look at some other tendencies that is in the market. This is not so much about how IT works, it's more about how the people think of IT and work in a workplace. So 45% are using social tools already. That's a lot. That means that almost half your staff is either looking at Facebook, LinkedIn, and so on every day they go to work. And luckily, we are in a position now where for many, LinkedIn is becoming the only thing they do at work, because it's actually what drives in new leads and marketing and so on. So that's also right now being digitalized a lot. We also know that people have many more than just one PC or one device. We have 4 times more devices per user today than 5 years ago. And the thing is here that means that you expect that your mail is available on your phone, your work phone, maybe your private phone, maybe your PC, maybe from your TV, and any other kind of iPad and so on that you have lying around. So that's cross-platform, cross-device as well. We have 5 generations working together in the same workforce, perhaps, or it could be. And a lot of people will be working remotely by 2020. Maybe not every day, maybe once a day or once a week or once a month. All of this leads to twice as many teams as we've had in the past times. And a lot of people spend their time then in just collaborating, sharing news, getting feedback. Maybe no one is the boss actually as such. We just work together to solve one common challenge. So all of these things added up, you get some kind of a new understanding of a digital DNA, where this right side, taken from the Agile manifest in 1999, is for most something we already know. But out of this new way of thinking and working comes a pretty complex for many and new organizational setup. Those that are the most agile and very, very oriented around working in the modern style always have a tendency to show up some kind of hand-drawn organizational charts. And I think that's because it's too complex to connect all these dots and behaviors into a classical pyramid-shaped functional matrix. And the tough job here is then if you look at PPM and Microsoft tools supporting PPM, and you have this organizational setup, it's very difficult to say, well, when it comes to this continuous attention, then you need VSTS. And then when it comes to building projects around motivated individuals, well, then you probably need project plus teams plus. It all matters about how the culture is and how you expect people to work in the future. So if we then take one step down this ladder again, looking more detailed at how DNA or the modern way of working impacts PPM, then we'll see that we still have projects, quite a lot actually, and I have some studies to share on the left side, who still consider the traditional waterfall approach as the approach for them. This is the stuff we're used to: centralized control, detailed project plans, work breakdown structure, we have finance and cost periods, we have cost centers, milestones, critical path, and so on and so on. And on the right side, we didn't have those people working agile or lean agile, or safe maybe, where they take decisions decentralized. They talk about epics and not business cases always. They have many epics maybe aligned with the same portfolio epics, so epics on different levels. They have estimation being done by playing poker, and so on and so on. So many new behaviors. And if you are the project management office and you are sitting in between those two worlds and you are used to only talking to the left side, you will most likely find it quite difficult to have a good solid discussion with the right side. Because the questions you are used to ask, they won't work on the right side. They don't have a start and finish date. They have sprints. They don't have a scope. They will do what they can do, and they will have the latest, shortest job first. And sometimes it's very difficult to make a roadmap to explain back to this group what's going on and what they should expect. And that is why many project management offices are under pressure and have been for quite a while, especially in IT. And the way to solve that could be to upgrade your project office to a portfolio office, or maybe something else, a digital office or a work management office, thereby embracing much more than just projects and the normal way of thinking about the project triangle. So there are various ways of organizing your PPM organization, and the design for these that you can choose from is typically staying where you are, top-down, bottom-up thinking. You have organizational setup, portfolios, programs, projects, tasks, to having something where you say, well, we have themes, revenue streams, epics, features, tasks, bugs. In this case, nobody would be a project manager. You would have product owners, scrum masters, and so on. Up here, it's more classical. Now, I have so far seen no one moving from here to here at all in one take. You always go through a process. And those steps that you can go through, or types of organizations, tends to end up with something called either bimodal, where you have your separate portfolio for agile activities with a separate budget and separate people working in it, to having another portfolio where it's all waterfall or traditional. In the middle, you have classical portfolio management, but at the lower level, you have not project managers, but scrum masters and product owners. So you have no project managers, but you have portfolio management. And hybrid is then that's the complexity, but also the one that I believe is most strongly represented. We'll see that later. But this is the case where we still do top-down or business case selection, stage gate management. But at some point, your initiatives, which have a start date and a finish date, it could be this iPhone. So my iPhone here has a physical, it's a physical device, which means that in some ways it's a traditional project to produce it. It has a scope, you know how to do it. At some point you have done it and it's released and you can buy it. But in that process, you load this piece of device here with software. And that software is something we will always continue to update. So you might have this classical way of thinking, phases, stages, and tasks. But in between, you have something called IT, which runs in sprints. And even though you have, let's say you have 4 sprints to finish the software going into this phone, that does not mean that the software will then end after the sprint is done. So your phone will then be locked down and put into a box so somebody can buy it, but the IT will continuously be updated. So when you connect it to Wi-Fi, obviously you get the experience that something has happened since it was produced, and now you get the latest update into your phone. That would be an example of hybrid, but it could be many other things. But traditionally, every time you have a product which also have some certain type of IT in it and it's connected, you will, because of that, be hybrid to some extent. So I have a little survey here, Prasanna, that I hope will work. I have this tool here called menti.com. For those who are participating, if possible, please access this site. It should be really fast, and then just use the code in the top right corner, 571978, and try to select which kind of organization you believe you are today. Not the one you want to be, but the one you feel that you are working in right now. We'll just take 2 minutes to do that. And hopefully it works. Yes.
I just did that, Peter.
Okay, perfect. I don't know how many are on the call and have access to this, so we'll give it 30 seconds more, and then I'm going to move ahead and show the results from the other one. Could also be that people won't share it. 3. Okay. All right. I'll move forward then. Well, last time I did this was last Monday, where I had 57 people joining and giving their results. And this is the result from a blended group of people from Sweden, Denmark, and Netherlands. And as you can see, we have not a lot in the Agile PMO Skill Agile setup, but a lot in hybrid and traditional, and also actually in bimodal. I was quite surprised about this one, but again, that's the way it is. In some larger organizations, maybe you are still at this point in time. But I normally would say that when I'm out working, it's the hybrid or the bimodal that I run into. And most likely it's the hybrid setup when you start to challenge if it's really 2 different portfolios. The difference between the two is that if you are a person working in this company, you either only work for Agile projects or you only work in traditional projects. You don't have a relationship where you work sometimes in this portfolio and sometimes in that portfolio. Over here, you have the situation where a person can be associated or allocated to an Agile task or a specific project task. That's the key difference. And if you bring this into the portfolio level, then which kind of portfolios is then needed for this kind of setup? And the thing here is that regardless of which one you are, you should probably look into what Gartner says when it comes to fear, fact, faith. That is still highly relevant. You need, in my opinion, at least 2 portfolios. One being portfolio X, the traditional one, where you might say that we know we are in a building today that has a cost of $100,000 a month to operate. And then somebody walks into your office or your portfolio machine and says, well, I made a business case. I found another office. It's better, and it costs you $20,000 a month less. Then somebody will compare as is with the replacement, so the fact, and it might be that this one will win. Makes perfect sense. It's rational. On the right side, you might have that person at Ikea saying, why don't we produce some light bulbs that can automatically turn on and off depending on the music or the mood? And then somebody will say, well, if we haven't done that before, should we go into that space? Well, how much money can we make on it? Well, maybe quite a lot. Yeah, okay. Have we done it before? No, we haven't. So is it risks associated with doing it? Obviously, quite a lot. We might fail. So if this kind of business case or initiative had to be compared with this one, and especially if the one managing this portfolio is financially focused, so the CFO and so on, then this would most likely lose. So blending this business case and this business case into the same portfolio with one budget and one decision group might end up causing quite a lot of stress and pressure on your organization. I would rather have organization have 2 portfolios at least, where this one has a pre-dedicated budget for the next year, some kind of percentage of the entire portfolio budget that's available for projects. So it could be 5% or 10% to ensure that you spend time on trying new things out. If you don't do this, you will lose out on the ability to be innovative, and someone else will be faster at you at trying things out and succeeding. So then we have the next thing where often we see people asking for program management, where they might be in reality asking for something else. So we all probably know that a program is when you have a bunch of projects related to the same business case. So the justification is not put onto one project at a time, it's the sum of all projects. So that would be program management, and obviously something that is highly relevant for many persons. But on the right side, you have people saying, and I've heard that a lot, well, I'm managing also a program because I'm a country manager in the Netherlands, and I have to look at these 3 projects. And suddenly you start seeing them adding up these 3 projects into a master project and trying to produce some kind of roadmap, where essentially they're only interested in a report. And then you have another person looking at it from a driver's theme or strategy perspective, who would then also say, well, I'm in charge of any project that has to do with this theme or strategy or driver. And the problem sometimes is that those projects have a relationship with different people, with different focus. So I think having a project pop up in various portfolios or sub-portfolios, mini portfolios, is the thing that we see happening quite a lot. And that is also why some have this cost center approach, where they try to distribute not just the cost, but also the benefits for each of these initiatives. It's for some highly complex if they haven't done it before, but it's much more relevant doing this, if this is your request or your need, than trying to force in a grouping of projects into what is called a program, because that's for sure something else. So Microsoft, in this case, obviously have tools, and it's obviously always subjective how you consider which tools are suited for which purpose. We at Projectum have this approach that I'm willing to share obviously today, where we say we have different industries, and these are all the verticals that Microsoft works with as well. Now on the left side, you have different methodology. So Prince2, PMI, Scrum, SAFe, many others. And these could be your inspiration or the actual project model you have today working for you. On the right side, you have different processes, disciplines, describing what PPM is to you. At Projectum, we have our view on it, but I have met a lot of customers who says, well, something like financial management, it's not something we look at. That's not related to our PPM processes. Or resource management we don't do, or time sheeting, time management. Well, we do that in some other system. It's not linked to our projects. So the left side, typically, the choices here, the industry you're in, and the right side disciplines that you consider being PPM relevant are the ones you should focus on. Plus your organizational design, what you want to become in the future, bimodal, scaled agile. Out of that comes a variety of tools by Microsoft that you can pick and choose from. Some of them are known to most of you. Maybe you haven't heard about StaffHub before, and so on. So there are many different tools that some are more known than others. And here's just a few of them. On top of that, we have a strong API by Microsoft, which means that bots and machine learning can pretty quickly be set up, like Q&A bots and a variety of bots, service assistants for the PMs. And in this case, that's also a way of ensuring that we don't have this friction all the time where we have to click too many places to make things work. And building a bot that is connected to Project Online in this case, or a planner or something else, it's a matter of something that can be done in days. Because you have the APIs, you have Azure, the bot service, you have cognitive services that will notify you and understand your intents. You have the vision.ai, which is also a way of taking a picture and have your phone or a bot automatically recognize what you're taking a picture from or of, and then automatically describe it with a coordination, GPS-wise, and so on and so on. So PPM is a lot. And here you have the traditional view on what Project Online is. So it's an advanced project portfolio program and work management thing. And again, depending on the design you have for your organization, it might not be the same thing for one company compared to another company. But obviously it covers quite a lot. Now you also have this thing where you say, it might be that for any project that we run, we have a team. But that's not the same as saying that every time we have a team working together, that we then have a project. So it's not a one-to-one relationship. It depends on looking at it from a project perspective. There will be a one-to-one, but from the opposite side, it's a many-to-many relationship. So when people group around something and call themselves a team, it's because they need to share what they're doing and share what they're working on. And this way of capturing work might not be linked to a project and might not at all be something that you as a portfolio manager or PMO should even consider trying to do reporting on, unless it's a requirement, unless what you're working on has to be invoiced and so on. So when it comes to Microsoft, we obviously have Teams. And again, Teams is for many a collaboration platform, but it's also something that using simple tools like Microsoft Flow could automatically be created every time you do a project. But maybe it's the opposite way you need to think sometimes, that because we have more teams than we have projects, then maybe it's the person first creating the team around an idea, and then later on that team will become a project, and not always the opposite direction. Maybe you start to collaborate, which I'm actually quite sure people do. You collaborate before you start up a project and run it. So I always try to collaborate around the idea after the project has been created. That's where Teams, in my perspective, steps in both before and after. So project is in this case just a side process, your project management. You also have Planner, so the Kanban board. Most again have seen that. Soon we'll have templates for Planner, and soon we'll be able to copy Planner items, Planner boards to another Planner board and reuse the findings and the learnings from a previous project or Kanban board. This can also be linked to project, and I think there are other sessions where we'll show that, or in this virtual conference. But this is also a way for some people to manage work. Maybe it's enough for them, but maybe we still need to roll it up into some higher level of portfolio overview. And then we have Visual Studio. So Visual Studio actually is a very strong, solid, agile work tool. Also supports scaled agile. Is Visual Studio Team Services only for IT? For some, maybe, because that's how they know it. But I can also clearly see why this should be able to work for many other kind of businesses than just those working with coding and programming. Because essentially it's a Kanban board, customizable, so you can break down your items in the way you prefer. There are tons of apps that you can reuse, sprints and burn down. Why wouldn't that work for marketing? And so on and so on. And then we have Staff Hub. So again, we have people working in a construction site. They meet in every day. The state requires that anyone on the construction site should be somehow telling the one under the construction site owner that they are on the ground. So if somebody comes in and from some kind of security perspective and asks, how many people do you have working on this construction site? You have to give that answer right now in case of fire and many other things. You also need sometimes to timesheet that you've been there because you have to invoice it as a constructor or a worker. So many other ways of looking at what work is when it comes to projects, in this case, construction. So now we have something like Staff Hub, which is much more than construction. It's just one case. So again, you can go in and think of people that don't have a PC as somebody still participating in projects. And you might have geofencing and GPS coordinates, which is already built into your phone. So when you go into the construction site, it will already know that you are there. You don't need to tell that to someone. And when you leave, it will also know that. And because it has a starting time and the end time, it'll also be able to calculate how much time you spent on the construction site. So maybe the thing that's missing is what work did you do today? And instead of just telling about progress, it might be the real thing to actually take a picture of the stuff you did. And maybe using Vision AI from Microsoft automatically tag what you took a picture from. So somebody can free text search around what happened that particular day. So I could keep talking about how we could innovate the work that takes place. But this is still work, in this case, related to a project. But the experience from the end users is not by sitting in front of a PC. It might just be to have your phone in your pocket with a camera. That's it. Here's just another example again of how you could have a different approaches to self-service and assistance that could improve the way of being a project manager. We have our approach. There are different bots out there. We have one called Butler. Out of the box, creates projects, resources, adds schedules. So in particular, this one I want to highlight because being able to sometimes create a project with a blank schedule and then later on say, well, now I'm going to need a building block of these 10 VPS items. Or I now know that this is going to be a very tough IT large-scale project. Then it would be great to just add that template from a container of best practice templates. So we do that using the bot. Updating KPIs, adding tasks, requesting resources, and so on is something we can do. Or preload a resource request already at the creation process of your project. Also possible. And then customers tend to come up with different ways of looking at what they believe a bot or an assistant should do. They might have different auditing requirements, KPIs, schedule, finance, and people. But all of this, again, is using the standard platform that is not project, obviously, but highly connected to project. So you have an API from Microsoft Project and Teams and so on, all the stuff I showed. And on the right side, you then have the cognitive service, understanding your intents, learning from what you're trying to have the bot do. You have the bot framework that Microsoft had provided, making it very easy to build these bots. And then you may maybe even connect it to other services. So here's an example on how we've looked at different models going back in time. Bimodal, where you have Visual Studio and Planner, and then Project on the right side for what we call planning and execution of your work. Portfolio management done in Project Online, and then Power BI on top. The same thing here, where nobody has Microsoft Project the client or scheduling, but they use Project for portfolio management and setting up the business cases or the epics. And here, again, portfolio management, but you both have Planner, you might have Visual Studio, and you might have Microsoft Project. So very different approaches, all depending on what kind of organization that you are. So to conclude on this, without having shown any technology, the implementation of this is highly a business transformation. You need to figure out what you are, what you want to be. Therefore, the compass in this case. And here is the way we typically advise customers to look at the PPM implementation. Try to agree on the vision first. Why are you doing what you're doing? What's the intent and the rationale behind this initiative? Then you probably should add some skills to the PMO. Get some best practices externally from other industries or from consulting that helps your PMO have a shorter time to the roadmap that you need to build afterwards. And to build the roadmap, if I just zoom in a little bit, it's much more matter of what services and benefits that your project or portfolio office want to deliver to the business a year from now. Much more than just building a requirement specification. And when we are around this requirement specification, for those listening from big organizations, I find it highly interesting that regardless of digital transformation strategies and the fact that AI is coming in hard, then yet I have to see, I haven't seen any requirement specification so far from any customer that I've worked with in the world who have asked specifically about, is the API strong? Can we connect it to machine learning or AI capabilities? And if so, how? Can it predict anything? I don't see those questions. Even though everybody's talking about it, yet we don't see any of these things going into your requirement specification. So I would advise any customer to look at the system we want to get in the future when it comes to AI. What is our expectations? And have that become a requirement, a solid requirement. And from that statement that you want to have in your organization, you make some initiatives, you break down the initiatives, you prioritize them, you make a roadmap for it, and you execute it. In this case, you will have several go lives for your end users, maybe once a month, forever until you're done. This approach that I'm showing you right here is different. This is where we're trying to take the top-down approach and still survive rolling out a PPM system large scale. So I've used this model several times. That's why I know it works. So the thing is that we start on the left side by talking to the C-level or the people as high as possible up in the decision hierarchy. We ask them for what they need to know about projects, if they could get that information on the plate every day, regardless of what business unit we look at. So IT, marketing, and so on. Don't care. If you have 1,000 projects going on in your whole organization and you wanted to look at them and compare them, what would you look at? There you will find that the answers are much more simpler than talking to the business unit leads. Finance, when it comes to the top of the pyramid, would typically be a matter of CAPEX, OPEX, last year, this year, next year, which is much more simple than asking a business controller, finance controller in IT, where you get the big spreadsheet with several cost types, CAPEX, OPEX, cost centers, benefit centers, weekly forecasting, actual cost from an ERP system being brought in, and so on and so on. So if we look at this and we define a rollout as a minimum viable PPM solution, then what you could do is essentially asking top-level management on their requirement needs, Set up project online in a minimum viable configuration, only supporting that requirement for reporting, and then push out that configuration to a PWA or project online portal to one of your business units. When they get that, they can use it as it is, or they can make a fit gap and figure out that they need to add more functionality so that the business unit will function. They are allowed to do that, but they are not allowed to remove any functionality, for sure. Because if they do, reporting will fail for those guys on the left side. So if all can agree on that, thank you for the project portal using Project Online, we will now just add something more to it so it works better for us. But if they do that and roll it out and do some training, at some point, the left side here, the top of the pyramid, will be able to report out across all business units because the same minimum viable configuration has been pushed out, making them become hardcore users of self-service BI and reporting, often used with Power BI on mobile devices. So this is important because we often see that people try to take it from a bottom-up approach, bringing in PPM to a group in IT. Maybe the CIO cares about it. Maybe the CIO reports to the CFO, who only cares about it to some extent, and all the way up to the CEO, maybe even the board. It takes forever, and many fail in that process. That's also why many PMOs are under pressure. So starting on the left side, making a very simplistic approach and an MVP solution, so to speak, and using that as the anchor for further rolling out this initiative on a global scene or cross-functional or cross-business units, is an approach that I've seen working several times and that I would like to share for this session today. So with that, I have a few minutes left for Q&A. So if anyone is up for that, shoot now. Or if not, Prasanna, then feel free to I have the final slide, of course, but then we'll end the session.
All right. Everyone attending, please post your questions in chat so that we can read out and Peter can answer. By the way, that was an awesome presentation, Peter.
Thank you.
Very different from what we have seen since yesterday.
I know. That was the point.
Yes.
I did not show IT, and I hope people are okay with that.
Right. Awesome. Looks like there are no questions. Do you have your contact information that they can contact you if they have any questions?
For sure. I think it's on the portal. I don't have it on a slide here, but I can add that afterwards if you want to.
Okay. So there's one question from Eric. I don't know whether it's Project Times Eric or our Eric Atwal. Peter, do you think Agile is the future for all organizations?
Yes, but you will still have projects and a locked scope for a lot of new product development initiatives. It's a blend. It's both and. It's not either or. I'm pretty sure about that.
All right. So far, that's the only question. So yeah, yeah. It's if you have your contact information, then we can post it and people can reach out to you, or they could. I'm assuming they could also stop by Projectum's virtual booth and get in touch with somebody from Projectum.
Exactly. There's a whole web page, but my blog is probably also a way to get through to me. So ppmblog.org. But otherwise reach out to projectum.com, and I think there are multiple channels, but like you said, we are also sponsors of this event, so they can also just join the virtual booth and see if they want to reach out there.
Yes. One more question. Nazir is asking, is Staff Hubs part of Office 365 suite?
Yeah. In terms of licensing, or in terms of does it connect to Office 365?
I think the question is more towards licensing.
Yeah, I quite honestly am not so sure. I know that some of our customers had it included automatically, but whether that's because of an E1 or E5 or E3 subscription, I don't know. So for some, it's part of it. For others, it's not. Okay. But we can probably look at staffhub.com.
Yeah, it depends answer.
Yeah, it does.
All right. Awesome. I don't see anything else coming up, so I'll let you finish your presentation.
Perfect. Okay. So I think that's all I had to share, Prasanna, actually today.
All right. Awesome. again, thanks again for an awesome presentation and a very different one. And a lot of people are saying it's a very thought-provoking session. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So for everybody attending, this session has been recorded and will be available on demand to watch later in a few days once we do some post-processing. Check back again. Thank you.
Thank you, Prasanna. Bye-bye.